Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the ParkTalk Podcast. I am your host, Danny Ream. The Naperville Park District's goal is to provide the community with a multitude of recreation and park experiences that provide many benefits, including better physical and mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and for this edition of the ParkTalk Podcast, I am joined by two clinical therapists from Goll Wellness Group, Christina Mondragon, Schrader, and Bryce Goll, to discuss the relationship recreation opportunities have with mental health. Christina and Bryce, thank you very much for joining me on the ParkTalk Podcast.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be here.
Of course. So a lot of people don't necessarily think about parks and recreation when they think about mental health, but can you tell us how they connect?
Definitely. I mean, recreation, kind of think of activity naturally from just mental health, neuropsych stuff, that the more active you are, it's a natural mood booster. So it's, hitting those endorphins, which natural chemicals that we produce, but kind of helps instigate that production and lowers stress hormones, such as cortisol, which finding ways to decrease stress and increase those good feeling chemicals is always a good thing. And that's something that naturally happens when we are more active. And so being involved in recreation builds a multitude of benefits. That's kind of a physiological benefit. Something for other mental health. Let's see here. Things may be such as increased confidence working with a team, building leadership skills, depending on what that activity is, motivation, if you're excited, to kind of have a team to work for. Those are just kind of some of the tools and the benefits of incorporating mental health with recreational activities and parks and recreational things that are offered.
Totally.
I think to add to that too, community, right? I actually grew up in Naperville. I was heavily involved with Naperville Park District, whether it was soccer, baseball, whatever. But community is something that kind of brings everyone together, obviously, not just at school, but through church or your soccer program or whatever Park District has to offer. So it allows kids to get involved, again, work on those communication skills, those team building skills, leadership skills.
Yeah, we have a lot of different programs for a lot of different, specifically sports for those opportunities to build a community and like really get that team spirit for our young kids and our adults as well. But what are some of the immediate mood and stress relief benefits people can feel from something as simple as just getting outdoors and moving a little, kind of moving away from our sports and recreation programs?
Yeah, I mean, a natural anti-anxiety decreaser is just touching grass, being one with nature, grounding yourself to the earth, literally, touching a tree, kind of all those things that we hear of just really connecting in with nature, and especially all the different massive park land that we have here. Mm-hmm. So if it's just walking, and something you can really do is tuning into mindfulness, being to the here and now, maybe listening to the birds, smelling the grass.
Right.
Those things, incorporating the senses to put you back into the here and now, on top of how being in nature helps our nervous system regulate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to add to that too is society's changed a lot. Kids are involved in a lot of things, whether it's indoor or outdoors, especially at an area like Naperville where everything is just moving and moving. And it's from one thing to the other. Getting outside, touching grass, having those couple moments where it's like, what am I doing? What movement am I doing today? And just allowing ourselves to kind of take a break from those things. And again, pushing our nervous system, pushing our mindfulness and our mind to just kind of give itself a break. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to find an hour to give yourself a break nowadays,
totally.
Right? Kids go from one thing to the next. Teenagers go from one thing to the next, and then you get into adulthood. I actually had I went to Naperville Central High School. One of my teachers said to me my senior year is, Bryce, read as much as you can now because one day you will not be able to. There won't be time to read.
Yeah. Oh,
right. And I think
that's
I think that's applicable to a lot of things. And so just giving yourself 15 minutes a day to allow yourself to do nothing. Be okay with listening to your breathing, with whatever is going on in your backyard, walking down the street, sitting outside to have your morning cup of coffee or eat your breakfast. It's all therapeutic.
I agree. There's nothing I love more than on a weekend, getting up early and just kind of sitting outside eating my breakfast. But something that's so great about Naperville, it's such a large city, and Park District, we have 140 parks spread out throughout the whole community. And there's so many opportunities for individuals to get that time outside. It's just so accessible. We try to make it as accessible as possible to residents to have that time to themselves. So is there anything, or is there something unique about being outside in a park or on a trail compared to being indoors when it comes to our mental health?
I think so. I mean, naturally, when there's sunshine, that's vitamin D, which also helps mental health. Kind of targets the fighting depression, the seasonal depression kind of concept. Also, motion is lotion. So whether you're swimming, walking, literally doing snow angels in the grass during the summertime, that kind of movement, it's connecting you with your body. And that's something that you really can only feel the full effects outside compared to inside. They have like mood lamps that you can use during the wintertime when we have to be primarily indoors. And there's only so much that can really fulfill, but besides like the natural part of nature that the Park District has to offer.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, you can take vitamin D supplements, right? But nothing is better than the actual source of that. So again, I think there's benefits from both being inside and outside, right? And there's obviously activities that we can do inside that is good for us. And there's activities we can do outside that is good for us. But if we're trying to look at a teenager and be like, how can I make this individual as well-rounded as possible? Giving them as many opportunities and different experiences is a good thing. A 2-year-old, he's turning 3 soon. I want him to be involved in everything.
Right.
I want him to play multiple sports. I want him to be involved with extracurricular activities. I want him to play an instrument. At some point, he's going to have to make that decision for himself. Hopefully in a few years from now. But giving him those opportunities to make that decision is important, right? So if you have teenagers or younger who are just focused on the inside and have no desire to go outside, and they don't have those leaders, those adults kind of pushing them to try these new experiences, how does that affect them later on in life? If they never push outside of their comfort zone and push into maybe an activity like going on a hike or playing on a soccer team or being a part of this club over here, if they never experience anything like that, that could have an interesting impact on them later on in life.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things I wanted to also ask you guys about is for kids and teens specifically, what role does playing, like any sort of play at, like on a playground, participating in a sport, or just unplugging have on their mood and overall well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add on to what you were saying, and so funny with the next question, because like social skills, especially at that young age, we had talked real briefly of like being on a team, that learning teamwork, learning how to share, learning how to take ownership, building in those leadership skills. But at the end of the day, like sports are meant to be fun. And so really instilling that at a young age so that you are able to get all the benefits that come with recreation. But learning those social skills with that, whether it's an individual sport, you're still playing against somebody. There's still a community in that sport or recreation. And so whether it's an individual aspect or a team aspect, learning how to communicate amongst each other. Also, typically like the coach is an adult, so learning how to communicate with individuals who aren't your same age or same gender is part of that, the benefit of being involved as a kid and a teenager, especially when developmentally it's so crucial time in their life for how that shapes cognitively.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we forget a lot is there's other things that are important besides just winning. You know, everybody wants to win, you know, but if you're playing a soccer game, not both teams can't win.
Right.
There's going to be a winner and there's going to be someone who doesn't win. Right. So what are these other skills that you can improve on? What can you do during that time that you're spending with your friends and your teammates that also help kind of shape like who you are and what your identity is? Yeah.
And I was, kind of just thinking about how for a lot of kids outside of going to school throughout the week, what other opportunities are there for them to interact with, their peers, other kids their age? And I think taking them out of, like a school setting where they can be more social, where they can play together. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that would have a much different effect on them cognitively than being in school, and that being their only, space.
Definitely. Bryce and I were actually just talking about that, of how some of the long-term friends are actually individuals that you meet outside of school. And like whether it's through like a park district activity or a club team or some other kind of aspect, you build a different kind of relationship with those individuals that you're not seeing every single day at school compared to those that you may see in school. And then the overlap of maybe there it is a classmate who is on a sport team not related to school. So it's interesting to see kind of the dynamic effect as what you were saying.
Absolutely. And not just for children, but also for adults as well. How can different types of recreation, from just walking on our trails to taking a class to being in an athletic activity, how can those types of recreation affect an individual's mental health?
It's about new experiences. Right? It's trying new things. It's learning something about yourself. So there's different like mindfulness skills that we'll use with clients, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, just again, touching grass. And 3, 2, 1, just a real quick example. What are 3 things I can see, 2 things I can hear, 1 thing I can touch?
Okay.
Just again, creating that connection and understanding like, hey, I can do this by myself. I can do this with friends. I can be my best friend in that moment. I can try a new experience. Again, it goes back to what I was saying before. If we don't push ourselves to do those things, we're never going to like truly know who we are and what our identity is and what we actually enjoy.
Yeah, and it helps build autonomy as a person, figuring out what you like versus what you don't like, can create the opportunity to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Everything that Park District has to offer can also give those kind of internal life lessons and learning how to manage through the discomfort. And again, also kind of building that autonomy of knowing what you really like. At the end of the day, as we were said, it's all about just having fun with it and figuring out where you can just kind of like let loose and mentally be kind of like, okay, relaxing that nervous system, as we were saying, and just kind of being at peace, being in the moment and allowing yourself to just be.
Now, can you speak to, this is just kind of an example I thought of, like if an adult does want to try a sport, like a team sport, but they don't have any friends or anyone to try with, and we have opportunities for adult recreation for individuals to sign up and get assigned to a team. But I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety for those individuals who might not be used to getting thrown into those situations where they're on a team with a bunch of people they don't know. Can you speak to the anxiety behind that and, I guess how someone can step outside of their comfort zone?
Yeah. I think there's this weird stigma around anxiety and around our emotions in general. Like when I look at emotions, I don't necessarily see anything bad about them. Right? Like your happiness is there for a reason, your anxiety is there for a reason, your anger is there for a reason.
Yeah.
Where it can turn negative is when it becomes less controllable, right? So it's just, we can look at somebody like anger towards outrage, right? With anxiety, so much of that is around the fear of the unknown, right? And so if instead of we look at our anxiety and go, okay, what are you telling me right now? What can I do with this information? What is my mind telling me? What is my body telling me? We can make better decisions for ourselves. Again, going back to, I think one of the first things I said, community. Right?
Yeah.
It is hard to find community right now. And I think with an area like Naperville, where there's so many close-knit communities, it's hard to get into there. So if somebody's looking for something new or wants to try something new, or a lot of clients tell me, like, I feel like I'm missing something right now.
Yeah.
So many times it connects back to community, and maybe they're missing out on that. I didn't have a huge community in my neighborhood. Like, I knew some of the kids around, but a lot of them tended to be older, more closer to retirement than like teenagers, obviously. So again, pushing out into church groups, into extracurriculars after school, into school sports, doing things through the Park District. That is where I met most of my friends.
Yeah.
I stood up at one of my friends' wedding, who I met when I was 14 years old. So those are those connections that you create in the community that kind of carries with you throughout your life.
Totally.
Yeah, and I could speak personally to that with your question, is also normalizing that as adults, it's so hard to make friends and it feels very awkward. And it's almost like, we witness the really young age, how they don't have a worry in the world and they're able to make new friends, and it feels and looks very awkward, but they don't care. It's almost like as adults, we know too much.
Right.
And so I remember after watching the 2016 Olympics, when rugby sevens came back into the Olympics, I was like, that is really cool. I grew up playing soccer all my life, missed the competitive aspect of it. And so I just Googled rugby clubs in Chicago to try to throw myself into the deep end. And it was super anxiety provoking. It was being introverted. That was also one kind of aspect to kind of target. Learning a brand new sport was another aspect to target. And then, like what you said, being involved in a group where I literally didn't know anyone. And, with anxiety, as what Bryce was saying, it's not bad. It's what is it trying to tell you? Reminding you what is the value behind it. And the value for me far exceeded the fear of not trying.
Yeah.
And so then, you kind of have your own affirmations in that sense of like, I can do hard things. It's like, okay, this is going to be nervous, anxiety provoking, but it's temporary. And at the end of the day, I miss being active and I want to learn a new sport, and who knows what it can bring, because you don't want to have fear debilitating of not knowing.
Right.
And it had a really good outcome. And I ended up playing rugby for about 10 years, still in contact with a lot of those players, and created the opportunity to be able to play in the UK for a little bit. And you just never know what it brings, what those opportunities can bring.
Yeah. And I know that we're talking a lot about, sports and athletic type of opportunities and programs, but I feel like when we also offer a lot of different artistic programs as well. And I feel like when you're in a group of like-minded individuals, you already kind of get that community. And you find, just people that are interested in something, whether that's, we offer like pottery, painting, any sort of like artistic, athletic type of program. You're already going into an area, a group that likes something that you like, which I think is super valuable as well.
Definitely. And that's a good point. We say sport and athlete a lot, but that's also kind of just under the performance umbrella.
Right.
And like what you said, that's theater, that's music, that's art, that's sculpting, whatever it is, anything that is a performance is kind of under that umbrella of like what we're talking about. And so that brings a good point, because whether it's a sport team or whether it's like a music class or a theater production, you're surrounding yourself with individuals who have similar interests.
Yeah.
And so reminding yourself of that, of like, you're probably all in the same boat. At the common denominator is you're all enjoying what you're doing. That's why you're there.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think we're seeing this more and more, because you see it popping up on social media all the time. People are looking for these new experiences and are looking for community, and just are struggling to find like what to do or where to go. Right. And like I was saying, like, you see this pop up on social media all the time. Like we're trying to bring dating apps to real life, where people are on stage, asking each other questions, and we're looking for something, so the Park District having so many different opportunities, and it's just like, okay, well, I'm not the most athletic person in the world. Maybe I can go try something like pottery and pushing our boundaries, understanding, hey, my anxiety isn't here to hurt me. It's here to help me. It's telling me like, ooh, this is new. This is different. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I won't like it. But again, if I don't try it, I'm not going to be able to find out.
Yeah. And, for anyone that is listening to this podcast episode and they're thinking to themselves, I could use a reset. What's one simple way they could take advantage of a local park or program right now to give them that relief?
Yeah, I would say, kind of, I can do hard things. If there's something that's interesting to you, what could it hurt to try out? If there's, kind of if you're kind of going through the options, like, do I want to try it? Do I not? It's like, why not? If anything, the point is to have fun, as we had said, using all these awesome resources that Naperville Park District has to offer, utilizing those resources, figuring out what you like, what you don't like. Having hobbies is an amazing thing outside of, the work and the day-to-day. Having something set aside for you, kind of like what Bryce was saying before, of being able to just be and utilizing those resources to be able to create that for yourself.
Yeah, we keep throwing around, or Christina, I should say, keeps throwing around like this have fun. I think we forget about it, right? Like, again, we get so wrapped up and stuck in our head that we forget, hey, this stuff is supposed to be fun.
Oh, totally.
And it's like, how can you connect, these new things that you're exploring to what you're doing now, right? It's just like, why I like going for walks around my neighborhood. Why wouldn't I like it somewhere new? Let's add another layer to that, or add a little more depth to that, and go for a walk in one of these parks, or
a walk with a group of people who also like hiking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's taking what you're good at now, and again, continuing to expand it and figure out how you can kind of create a larger comfort zone for yourself. Then all of a sudden you're trying crazy things, right? Or maybe something that you'd never thought you'd try before, right? Yeah. You're like, oh, well, I like pottery. Well, maybe I'll like this. Or, you know what? I've never actually tried a sport. Maybe I should try something that I've never done before.
Yeah, and I can definitely speak in the aspect of, recreational sports. There are some activities that I've never tried before in a competitive setting that I have tried, and I end up loving it. So, no, it is that kind of starting small, whether it is exploring a new park or a new trail. And the sky's the limit when you do that.
Yeah, I know. I think of like dodgeball and kickball are like really unique opportunities that I don't know if there's competitive leagues for it, but to me, that is one of those really fun pastime activities that I feel like park districts tend to offer. And you build your community within that team, and having that support and tying that into the mental health aspect. Having a support group is one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself holistically as well. That whether you're going through something relating to sport or work or not, having that support group that you can form and develop through your park district team is huge.
Yeah. I was thinking more ultimate frisbee. Pickleball's obviously huge right now.
We got a lot of pickleball programs. Everyone loves it.
Yeah, it's
even
it's
like
intense.
The pool. Yeah, just casually swimming around the pool too.
Absolutely. Well, mental health is an incredibly important aspect of our overall well-being, and providing the community with tools to live happy and healthy lives is definitely one of the driving forces of the Naperville Park District. So whether it's Mental Health Awareness Month or any time of the year, we hope everyone continues to enjoy our parks and programs and experience the benefits they bring. Christina and Bryce, thank you once again for joining me on the Park Talk podcast to discuss this very important subject.
Thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you so much.
Of course. If you're looking for more content, you can find all our podcast episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or at napervilleparks.org/podcast. And full-length video episodes are available on the Naperville Park District YouTube page. As always, be sure to stay up to date on everything going on with the Naperville Park District by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, or by visiting our website at napervilleparks.org.